Alright everyone, welcome back. Last week we went over technical stuff. Sure, we can have everyone in focus, or we can bring our focus down to one point and have the background be creamy and full of bokeh and just make everything look high-end. This is what I'm always trying to do at weddings. We can do shutter speed. We can change it. We can make it super fast, snap, 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 and have those pictures going fast. You can take pictures of people running, no blur. Or you can slow that shutter speed way down and you can get blurry pictures for whichever reason you want. Sometimes you want to do it, take a long exposure on a tripod so you can get star photos. The other thing we talked about was ISO. As it starts to get dark, you want to jack up that ISO so that you can still see what's going on. I had a wedding on Sunday and it ended in the pitch black and I did not have a flash on me, and so I jacked up my ISO. It was dark. You could not see with your eye, but my camera was still able to see a little bit with its jacked up ISO. So there's all these different things we can control with our camera, and it makes everything so much better because we can control light, we can control blur, we can control in dark and then in brightness. We're able to roll with the punches. But even if you've mastered all these technical skills, you still might not be able to get consistently beautiful pictures unless you've mastered light. So we're taking a break today to master light, because even though it's actually an easier lesson, it's going to make such a big difference for you. So here we go. When I started shooting weddings years ago, I was terrified because when you're at a wedding, you're stuck wherever the wedding is and you can't just run off to find better light. And people kept having their weddings at like noon or 2. And if you've ever taken any pictures at noon or 2, you know the light is terrible. It's like super harsh light. There's dark eye sockets, there's dark, and there's too bright, and everything all at once. And there's none of this nice, creamy, light and airy, dreamy kind of photo. When you're not the bride, you don't really decide where the wedding's gonna be. So sometimes I was lucky and it would be like in the shade in trees, and other times I was so not lucky and it was like noon or 2 p.m. in an open field and the sun was blasting. I remember this bride came down the aisle and I took a picture of her and the sun like blasted her face off. It was so bad and I didn't know what to do. And I didn't realize that there was a fix for it. If you just change your angle slightly, your problems are solved. So crazy. I could save myself all that trouble. So, what is the secret to getting good light even when you're stuck in a certain place? The secret is you want your subject to always be facing their shadow. So the sun needs to be hitting them in the back of the head and they need to be facing their shadow. That means you as a photographer, you're facing the sun, you're shooting into the sun, and the client, the person, your subject, they are facing your shadow. So what does that look like when I'm shooting a wedding? I might be shooting from the audience side if the sun is coming this direction. And if the sun is coming this direction from the other side, then I'm just in the back of the wedding or like up front shooting in this way because I want that creamy, light and airy, not blasted off kind of look. And now it can be kind of hard when it's like noon. How do you tell, like there is no shadows almost, but you can kind of look at the back of people's heads. Like, is the sun hitting them on the back of the head or is it hitting them in the front? And the same thing, sometimes when it's cloudy, it's kind of hard. And if it's cloudy but not cloudy enough to change all these rules, you want to make sure that sun is still behind them. So all that to say, now when I shoot a wedding, I just shoot towards the sun. If I always take a few photos with the other direction if I have to. But it takes a lot of effort, editing work, and it's not high-end and it's not impressive at all. I just take them because I have to. Okay, just running through this one more time. You can see in direct light, she has dark under her eyes. She's shading her eyes now. And you can follow my little tracker. You can see where the sun will be on all the different dates. And there is the sun now. And so now she has a nice little outline and she's properly exposed. It's perfect. Thumbs up. Okay, so I was gonna tell you about this one wedding. So the bride came down the aisle. I blasted off her face with the sun. I didn't know what to do. But when it came to group photos, I was like, we are out of here, out of the harsh sun. I'm finding a tree because trees are good, right? Shade is good. So we found this tree and we had good light. That light was hitting them from the back of their heads and they had shade. But then in front of them, they had more shade. Like the bank went down and then there was just more trees. I didn't realize it at the time, but the shoot went great. We did their photos. They looked wonderful. I put them on the computer and suddenly realized that they had green under their chins, green under their noses, and green like here. I did not know how to fix it at the time. Now I can sit there and edit it for like an hour and fix it. Maybe not an hour. Close to it though, because you can't just do a quick fix for this. You have to literally scrub and paint it off your photo. So I had this whole shoot, this wedding, came home. It was so bad. And I didn't realize the reason why was because, well, obviously the green from the trees above and the grass below was bouncing up and hitting them. But I could have fixed a lot of that trouble by having secondary light. So rule number 1 is you want that sun hitting you kind of from the back. Rule number 2, you want light, secondary light. So your primary light and your secondary light. Your secondary light fills in your face. It keeps you from having darkness. It keeps you having from somehow the color around your nose can get so deep and dark when you don't have secondary light. You need secondary light to make your skin look normal and then keep your clothes from giving you color cast. Keep the trees from giving you color cast. So primary light and some secondary light, which is usually open sky. That usually works. I forgot about this summer. Like, I know this stuff, but I was at this wedding and it was so bright. I was in Canada and it kind of seemed like Canada has extra bright sun. It was so bright. And I was a little bit frustrated because of course I want like golden hour photos. They're easy and they're beautiful and I can do them in like 5 minutes instead of taking an hour or two in the middle of the day to like work with bad light and, you know, trying to make it into good light. So anyways, I followed the rules. I kept the sun behind and I did it in open fields and flower fields and different places. Then I was like, you know what? Let's go catch ourselves a break. Let's go into the woods. And so we went into the woods. Sure enough, I got that sun hitting from like somewhere behind them. And it was just streaming golden rays down on them. It was so beautiful. Except that I forgot that I need secondary light. So, beautiful photos. I put them on my computer and they've got green down here, green down here, and green right here. And the guy was also wearing a blue suit and they have some like blue and then yeah, bits of orange just from the goldenness of the woods. I probably had 200 photos in the woods. I could have edited one photo and then applied that edit to all of them and been done in 5 minutes. But instead, I spent hours because I had to clean off the green and the blue color cast. So how could I have fixed it? I could have gone to the edge of the woods where there was some more light, some secondary light to fill in their faces. Now, I actually did do that at one point, but the woods was too deep. Now I'm gonna have to pause because the train, hang on a second. Okay, the train's gone. So what I was going to say is I did eventually get to the edge of the woods where the light made that popping, crisp, beautiful skin tones with that secondary light filling them in. But then the problem was this woods was too large, and so that light coming from behind was not quite strong enough. I had a couple beams. But the third mistake people make is allowing there to be deep dark holes. So when you're having the light coming from behind, you're creating this beautiful, creamy, like light and airy look. Don't put a dark tree trunk or something dark in the middle of that unless you're like a dark and moody photographer, maybe. When you get the perfect balance between this light coming from behind and this secondary light filling in the front, that there isn't something deep, dark, and inky in the background that's just destroying it all. I have a couple pictures that I made for a bride I have in 2 weeks. So we're looking at this row of trees. It's beautiful. Her wedding is like at noon. Whoa. So I wanted her to know where she can and can't have her wedding. So I gave her the option of being at the end of the row of trees where she's gonna have some secondary light filling in her faces. And then I gave her this example of what will happen if she's down deep in the row of trees instead of being out where her face has access to. Like, what will happen is this inky dark tone, and whatever color the guy is wearing. If it's a blue jacket, oftentimes he'll get a blue cast. So basically, we love those rows of trees, but let's just pull ourselves out far enough that we can get that secondary light, but also not be too far from the back of the trees that it's not like a black hole back there. So basically I end up trashing locations a lot of times if I can't have this balance between the back light and the front light. Because if I'm creating a black hole, it's just, nobody loves it. So, okay guys, that is it. 3 mistakes we can avoid. 1, by shooting with the sun pouring in behind your subjects, and number 2, by having a nice secondary light, usually open sky. You can think though of other reflective things, like maybe a big white sidewalk is casting wonderful light up that's white and nice, not red or green. The other thing you want to do, number 3, is look out for those black holes. Now, side note, you may notice that iPhones don't really follow these rules, and that is because they have HDR and whatever corrective mechanisms built into them so they don't act like cameras. Cameras are a whole different thing. So these are the rules for cameras. Light coming from the back, some secondary light, and watch out for black holes. But there is sometimes when you actually want to break these rules, and it's kind of crazy. I never realized it. I'm such a rule follower. Once I figure out that this is the way to get the pop and the beautiful look, I'm not going to shoot any other way. So one night I was out doing this family shoot, and we live in the mountains, so tall mountains, and if you're up in the mountains, when the sun goes down, it literally is like a minute long before the sun is gone, and you go from golden hour to blue hour, versus where I used to live, where we were farther away from the mountains and that angle of the sun slowly dipped for like 30 minutes or an hour. So very different. Anyways, so we were up there doing golden hour. It was beautiful. The skin was amazing. The sun was like right behind their heads. And of course we had open sky in front of them. So, and then the sun went away in a minute and a half. And everyone turned ghostly white. I don't mean they were just like kind of white. No, they were ghostly white. And so I put the pictures on the computer, and I have all these golden hour pictures, and everyone's skin is like, orangish, brownish, And then we went into the switch into blue hour, and everyone was ghostly. And so I started like, there's color sliders in Lightroom, and I started upping the color in their skin, did all kinds of things, and I'm in a okay-ish, some was really weird, but I didn't realize that all you need to do is flip it around when it comes to blue hour. If the sun is going down here and it's been behind your clients, then you need those clients to turn around and face where the sun was, and suddenly their skin is all full and beautiful again, colorful. I had the same thing at the beach, and then found out it's a law, it's a rule. if it's a super cloudy evening sunset at the beach and there's not a ton of light and you're just ending up with this washed out background, try turning around your clients. If it's dark enough, you actually might be wanting to face your primary light, which doesn't make much sense except for these low lights. So just think, keep the rules unless it's extremely low light or blue hour, and that will save you a lot of trouble. And blue hour is so fun if you do this, because you not only have those rich tones, but you also have like the whole scene. You don't really have anything blown out behind you. And now that's actually probably one of the most challenging things about shooting towards the sun, is oftentimes you're gonna blow things out. Now if you see great light, is sun shining behind the head, some secondary light, and watching out for dark holes. Amazing pro light would be something to the next level, right? And that next level would be having something to diffuse that light coming from behind. Not something that's big and dark and heavy, but maybe something that lets the light all through that, but absorbs some of it on its way. Very interesting thing, if you go into a field of tall golden grass, that light is actually just like being absorbed into that grass. So fascinating. Okay, I'm excited, guys. This week, practice that. Just get your camera out, take some pictures, and see what happens when you put these 3 pieces together. And then hopefully I can see your pictures coming up soon next week. All right, we'll see you.